Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to another episode of Endurance Chat. I'm Michael Olivari, and joining me in this two-parter episode tonight, we're going to split in halfway through. We'll explain more about that later. For the first half, though, I have with me Kiwi Kris and Ollie. I'm not going to make that mistake again. Ollie Trollverse. Good evening, lads.
Good evening. Good to be back.
You were close.
Trollverse. I can't.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I'll let it go. But no.
The problem is your name on Discord where we're recording this has your full handle, and I always read that, and yeah, okay. Anyway, we're going to talk about the WEC race at Spa to start with, and then we'll have Austin and Kris, who actually got to catch up in person at Road America, so they'll talk a bit about some Road America happenings and IMSA stuff. But firstly, the WEC is back. Well, it was back.
Finally.
Yeah, 174 days between WEC events. And boy howdy, it was a majesty to behold. It had a little bit of everything and then some. So we're just going to crack straight into it. The first thing I want to mention before we really get into the teeth of the event was that there was blistering conditions at Spa for the weeks leading up to the event. So the ELMS race was 35 degrees and hot the whole weekend. The whole week of the WEC race was about that same temperature. And then the morning of the race, it bucketed down. And so we actually started under safety car, and there was a few more rain showers through the race. And that really threw up a very challenging event for the return to WEC. Because remember, for a lot of these drivers, it'll be the first time that they've been in a sports car since February, since COTA. So weather played a really, really big part. There was cars going off on the formation lap as well. I think the Alpine was very, very lucky not to hit the wall at Eau Rouge. So it was a bit of a mess, but we got underway, and it was good to have WEC racing back. So thank you for bringing us back what we're here to watch. But it was an intriguing race, wasn't it?
It was. And we should say the weather was actually a vast improvement on last year.
Yeah, when cars going off on the formation lap is an improvement to the weather last year, you're in the Ardennes.
Yeah, confirm. After checking into the Four Seasons last year, yeah, it was much an improvement.
Brilliant.
Also, was the Wins Porsche. I don't know if Keating was driving at the time that went off on the formation lap as well, but it was his car at the very least.
Yeah.
How he didn't hit the wall harder than he did either.
Did he actually hit the wall? I missed that.
I think he missed it by
Missed it by that much?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that really threw a spanner into the works, and we saw another spell of rain about 90 minutes in, which really changed the entire shape of the race. Surprised more cars didn't go off through that period as well, actually. Everyone was quite well behaved. But what we did notice was a significant drying of the track very quickly on both occasions. Once the rain stopped, it was like the track had heaters underneath it and just really saw a dry line coming together. And I think that is one of the reasons why there was a bit of malarkey in the pits and with tyre strategy throughout the race, because finding the right time to swap to slicks was paramount for a lot of the races, except in P1, where the race was basically decided after the first stint.
Yeah, well, who would have thought a four-wheel drive would have an advantage over two-wheel drive in wet conditions?
I mean, there was that, but there was also a little bit, maybe you call it inexperience from the rebellion, because in that first stint, they were nowhere. I think something to the tune of 7 or 8 seconds per lap slower than the Toyotas. So what was their mistake?
Tire pressures.
Yep, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I have to commend McNish in the booth for this one, because he called it perfectly before. He was saying, this isn't Norman Nato's fault. A lot of people here were saying in when we were discussing the race live, Nato, it's his fault. Why is he driving? And then McNish backed him up, and then the team came out and said, yeah, we got the tyre pressures too high. And it was a complete waste of a stint. It completely lost them touch from the front of the race, and ever since then they were fighting to catch up. But in the wet, they were just not there at all.
Yeah, I think by the time I tuned into the race, I missed the start, and when I caught it on replay, they'd lost 2 laps by the second safety car period, and 2 laps as a privateer going up against Toyota, even with an EOT advantage, which we'll discuss a little later on, you were never going to gain that back. And even the bi-collars, I mean, this is no slight to bi-collars, but even haven't raced for a whole season bi-collars was quite comfortably ahead of the Rebellions at the first stint. And Kiwi, this is something that we've seen in racing a bit closer to home as well. I think the 2017 Bathurst 1000 Triple Eight messed up the tyre pressures, and we saw a similar thing happen for the Shane Van Gisbergen and Matty Campbell car.
Yeah, where they basically spent the last half of the race just chasing their own tail and eventually running out of brakes.
Yeah,
well, that hard.
Yeah, that was a great Bathurst if you want to catch up on that one, if you can find it. But yeah, people were saying the same things as Ollie was just suggesting. You know, everyone was saying Campbell was a joke. Campbell doesn't have the skill. And then the team came out and said, we missed the tyre pressure window by a mile. But in the dry, the comparison was quite a lot closer than a lot of people were expecting. Ollie, you've done a bit of analysis for us. Can you tell us a bit about what you found?
Yeah, so on dry weather running, the parity is really there. I haven't seen it this close in a long time. If you take the top 50 laps from the top 3 cars and then average them out individually, both Toyotas were setting an average lap time of 2 minutes 4 seconds 0.2, and then the Rebellions were 2 minutes 4 seconds 0.5. That's including all the laps with traffic as well. And we're talking about, Rebellion, they can't get around traffic. This is including that window. So it is, compared to what we've had at the start of the season, let's say, this is ridiculously good balance. If you plot their traces as they get developed through their best laps, they are going toe to toe, matching really close. So it's a shame that it wasn't a fully dry race, because then it would have been really close all the way through the 6 hours, potentially Toyota just winning on time in the pits alone. But for the team to drop off like they did in the wet is shocking. They were in the wet slower than bi-collars, which is saying something. Well, yeah, it's just not good enough. And it's not, a good omen for a autumn Le Mans.
Yeah, we'll talk about a bit later on as well.
Yeah.
But in the transition between the wet and the dry, the fastest cars on track were not the Rebellions, of course, not even the Toyotas. Actually, the top of the LMP2 field with Guido van der Garde behind the wheel that were the fastest cars on track. But even through the first stint, the Rebellion was struggling to keep the LMP2s behind, and in fact got passed by, I think, 3 or 4 of them, which I think was Van der Garde, Albuquerque, and I'm trying to remember the third. I think it might have been Menezes in the Alpine. So yeah, the car...
He's in the Rebellion.
Oh, he's in the Rebellion. It's everyone's swapping cars on me so quickly with
You've done too many rewatches of the historics.
Were you thinking of Andre Negrão?
Yes, the Grau. So I think they had a bit of a leg up on the Rebellion in that first stint, and there shouldn't be an opportunity for the LMP2 cars to be passing on pace the LMP1s like that.
It's a legacy of the veto for the tyre change in LMP1. Ever since the complaints have died down, but they're still there. They still have too much power for the rear tyres compared to the Toyotas, and then no power through the front tyres. So they're going to be ice cold and overheating at the rears compared to a Toyota setup, which is less power on the rear axle and also driving the front axle. So they've got it against them. The hand is against them before the start of the race, and then when you throw in the effects of a wet track, tyre temperatures are just super hard to manage, and that's why LMP2 cars that are pretty similar nowadays, especially to the Rebellion, which is an upgraded LMP2, let's be fair, they have all of this wealth of development, of history of driving in the wet as well, and the tyres are bespoke for them, so it's kind of not that much of a surprise anymore.
Yeah, great that you bring that up, because I have a question. Well, I had a thought. Would it have been maybe better for Rebellion to maybe run the LMP2 tires, or run a development prototype of the LMP2 tires this season, instead of running a tire that's made for a four-wheel drive hybrid application? Run something that's made for an Orica 07 chassis and do some development on it to make it deal with some slightly higher, slightly larger power and better aero. Would that be something that could have been made, a decision that could have been made at the start of this season?
They could have done it if they had the money.
Yeah, fair.
But they are given tyres from Michelin, and they got to use them.
Yeah, fair enough. Maybe something. Well, I was going to say something to think about for the future, but the future of this class is 2 more races, so that's a little bit of a shame. And the future of Rebellion as well is only 2 more races. In saying that, though, it was extremely encouraging to see the EOT bring the lap times together so closely. We've had so many discussions and complaints and things to note about the EOT over the course of the season. But as we approach the final stages, it is good to see at least that it's gotten close to the mark in terms of a race. Of course, the entire point is to equalize the championship, when you could argue to the end of the earth about whether or not that's done that. But with Le Mans coming up next, where there will be no success ballast system, that was part of the agreement with Toyota, and then Bahrain after that, which could very potentially have a much larger effect from the results of Le Mans. This might be as good as we get to see it.
It's encouraging because it is not that similar, but it's as similar, I guess, as you can get to the South circuit. So it's kind of proving that now they know how to do it. They just need to do it again. Yeah.
But the success ballast system is taken off at Le Mans, isn't it?
Yeah, the success handicap system is being removed, but they know what parameters are required, let's say, when they do the custom balancing, as it were, in air quotes.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kiwi.
I'm kind of hoping that, because obviously it comes off for Le Mans and it gets reapplied for Bahrain. I'm kind of hoping they forget the Le Mans result, forget this race because there was compromised with a wet track, and of course Toyota's going to be faster on a wet track. Just take this success handicap system into Bahrain.
Yeah, that would be
mad.
Yeah.
Just take this. It works. Take it.
Yeah, that would be probably the most correct way of doing it. But of course, the ACO has this legislated in place, and we know what Frenchies being Frenchies are like. We're gonna throw it in there, of course, every single time. So yeah, we might see it change, but depending on how far the success ballast swings, we could see a continuation of the trend of a team in LMP1 leaving the sport, winning the final race of the season at Bahrain, which has happened 3 times now, 2 times.
So yeah,
we need to make an edit of the goodbye Audi. All the goodbye Porsche videos where there's the tractor going down the German highway, but just give it like a zebra print paint job. I don't know.
Or just a watch rolling down the road, Rebellion leaving.
Oh no, not a Rebellion.
They don't roll; they're like square.
that would be a very expensive ad just for the watch. Any other comments on LMP1 before we move on? LMP1 was basically decided at the end of the first stint, unfortunately. We should mention, though, that the number 8 Toyota had problems, electrical problems, which does not necessarily bode well heading into Le Mans. So the number 7 one, I'm going to just quickly fact check because I'm not 100% sure if I got that right. Yeah, that was the right way around. So a win in the tune of 34 seconds at the end of the race. It seemed to be a problem with the pit lane speed limiter coming on, or some other related limp mode coming on when the car was coming out of slow corners, which troubled the number 8 car. So it didn't affect them too much in the end, but it certainly put them out of shape for the win.
And you're right, it is a concern for the 24-hour race, but at the same time, with Toyota being as good as they're going to be compared to the other LMP1s, as long as they get a handle on that, they'll be fine.
Quick touch on Bicolors. They were third in the early stretch, comfortably faster than the P2 cars, which is, I think, their main goal. They did suffer a bit of an electrical gremlin or some sort of gremlin in the car late on, so they finished 17 laps down. But you can't be too disappointed with that result, seeing as they haven't run for an entire year.
The biggest thing for me, I think they've been developing that electronics package, as you said, because having attended the wet race last year, they have or had at least a really poorly calibrated gearbox setting.
Yes,
where they could. I've mentioned it before, where they could only shift gears on no throttle or 100% throttle, and in the wet, you really want to balance on the throttle and exit and be really careful and not have too much wheel spin to be able to change gear by mashing the throttle. But in the wet, they were only 2-3 seconds a lap slower than the Toyotas with four-wheel drive. So that would lead me to assume maybe they've got that drivability set up a lot better to be able to short shift, which is, kind of like a basic human right of LMP ones, I guess, that they never had. But yeah, I think it's an improvement, and fair play.
Yeah, well, not only were they only 2 or 3 seconds behind the Toyotas, but they were 2 or 3 seconds ahead of Rebellion for that first stint. So they were in a commanding third position for the early part of the race, and they were in fact, ahead of the P2 field through that wet period as well, which is better than what the Rebellions can say. So it worked out nicely for them. Again, they did have problems towards the end of the race, but they didn't barbecue, which is an achievement in itself. Kiwi, did you have something you just wanted to add?
All I was going to say was my Bicolors Le Mans bet is now tradition. Is probably looking pretty dangerous for me.
What is your bet again? That they make it through hour one?
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll be fine. What's the worst that could happen?
What's on the line this year? So you had olives, you had
hot peppers.
Hot peppers. What's going to be next?
I haven't decided yet. Suggestions in chat.
If you have a suggestion of what Kiwi should eat, provided Bicolors make it through 1 hour of Le Mans, please let us know, because that's one of my favourite parts of watching Le Mans, is watching Kiwi make a fool of himself yet again.
I always make a fool of myself. What are you saying?
Yet again. We'll move on to LMP2, which I think was the star of the show in the Spa race. It was, in the end, a 1 lap gap, but that's a bit of a misnomer considering the location of the P1 field throughout the race. So the winner ended up getting a lap on the field, but it was a 3-4 way tussle right up until the very latter stages of the race that could have gone anywhere between United Autosports, Racing Team Netherlands, Cool Racing, and Signatech Alpine. And in the end, it was the form team, United Autosports, who took this win, making it their 3rd win in a row at Spa Francorchamps, their 3rd win in a row in the WEC, their 5th LMP2 win in the past 6 weeks, and continuing their winning streak in LMP2, which goes all the way back to Bahrain 2019. They are essentially untouchable at the moment. It's kind of scary.
It's
great form.
They're just a great team with quite possibly the best driver lineup in the class. Are we that surprised?
It's not that we're that surprised. It's just we haven't seen that level of consistency from an LMP2 team ever. Like even G-Drive at the peak of the evil empire that they were didn't have that level of consistent winning. Sure, they were in the contention for championships everywhere, but they weren't winning races indiscriminately like that.
True.
Yeah, at the moment, United have just found something above everyone else, and it's making it look like the change from the Ligier to the Orica is absolutely the correct decision to make if you're an LMP2 team, because they've just come out of the blocks and just won everything. So yeah, can anyone challenge United anymore? Like, is anyone even close?
Well, I don't think remember, we didn't see the best of Jackie Chan DC this race. They were nowhere. They had early issues and ended up quite a number of laps down, didn't they? In the end?
Yeah, they ended up 8 laps down in the end.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So, and yes, they were on the Goodyear tyre, which the wet tyre seemed rubbish.
Well, I think, Ollie, you've got another little plot that you've done that shows the difference in tyre performance between all the LMP2 competitors. Can you shed some light onto why Jackie Chan DC and Jota was so far behind?
Yeah, so it's the debut for wet tyres in competitive running for the new Goodyear supplier. They are, let's not forget, the same family, as it were, as Dunlop, so there's quite a lot of carryover, but it is pretty new. And then when you think about amateurs as well, who can't pick up the dynamics of the specific new tyre quickly, then it will take a while. Yeah, I think, they've got a lot to learn and build on, and for their sake, again, just like we mentioned in LMP1, we hope that Le Mans is dry, because they were really competitive in the dry.
Yeah, so you've done another lap time trace for us, similar to what you've done for the P1s, and these will all hopefully be coming together in a sports car engineering blog sometime soon, Ollie?
Hopefully,
yeah. So you'll be able to check them out for yourself. What is immediately striking to me is that in the peak lap time between the two tyres seems to be pretty similar, but it's so unsustainable for the Goodyears to stay at that top lap time for a long period of time. So it's only 5 laps away from their best that the Goodyear is 6 seconds, 7 seconds behind the times that the Michelin clad runners can do in the wet. And let's not forget, we've spoken about this even in the very first days of Endurance Chat back in 2016. Michelin wet tires seem to be just better than anything else you can put on a car. I remember Alex Brundle in a wildcard Pegasus racing car at Shanghai when they had that wet race in 2016 or 2015, where he was a lap ahead of the field, and then as soon as it dried, the Dunlops he was on were just the Michelins he was on was just monstered by the rest of the field coming at him. So Michelin do make a good wet tyre, and it absolutely showed. We made mention before that Guido van der Garde and Felipe Albuquerque were the fastest cars on track in that transition period between the wet and the dry. So yeah, the Goodyear guys did not have a good run. We should focus more on Guido van der Garde and the Racing Team Netherlands team, because on the back of that amazing first stint, they were in the hunt right until the very end of the race, and Guido van der Garde came from behind the GTE field to lead the race at the end of the first wet running, which is phenomenal. And we've seen him do it time and time again at this circuit. He just seems to be absolutely hooked up around this racetrack, and for me, he was the driver of the day.
Oh, without question.
Nice.
I thought Phil Hansen was pretty good. I thought Phil Hansen was probably a close second, but Guido van der Garde definitely number one driver of the day.
Yeah, and he just seems to have something that other people don't get around Spa Francorchamps. It was very interesting how they did the strategy in the Racing Team Netherlands car, because they basically front-loaded all of his time and Job van Oetert's time, and left Fritz to do a very short, the minimum stint in the dry later on, and it almost worked out for them. Had some of the incidents fallen their way, they actually might have come away with the win. But I did predict they'd get a podium, so I'm saying that's on me. I did that.
Oh, the Oracle Floodman.
I wish. Anything else that you want to say about Racing Team Netherlands? Because I think they just had the performance of the season, even though they won a race already this season.
Another team profiting from the switch to Orica. They're doing pretty well. And the main thing there is, yes, the peak performance of the pros is right up there with the best, if not being the best.
And Fritz is no slouch. Let's not forget that.
And Fritz is getting better.
Yeah.
And there was something that Martin Haven said on commentary, which I think is something that we should probably think about and discuss a little more. Maybe not right now, but just in general for LMP2 cars and the bronze and amateur drivers. This was when Fritz was leading the race and Paul di Resta was coming up behind him. He said, Fritz is not slow. He's a very quick driver. If you're in the passenger seat, you'd be thinking he's going very, very fast. But he has an ex-Formula 1 driver behind him. So you have a very quick amateur driver versus a very quick pro driver, and that's the comparison. And it was 2 or 3 seconds a lap that di Resta was catching him. But Fritz did an amazing job in keeping that car pointed in the right direction and being competitive as well. He managed to hold up Laurent for a few corners, which then ultimately resulted in quite a nasty incident for Laurent in the Alpine. But at no real fault of his own or Van Aert's in that respect. So, but Fritz has definitely improved a long way from where he was in the Dallara, where it was basically a bit of a joke. Let's be real here.
The other quote I liked as well that they took about talking about Fritz was his job is just to lose as little time as possible. So don't get involved in those battles, but get past smoothly and you get past cleanly. Yeah, and he actually went up a bit of a fight, like you said, against Laurent, and he even tried to fight Paul di Resta for a corner.
And he almost hung on.
He almost hung on.
I mean, it was always going to happen, but he almost hung on.
He spun, I think, a few times at this track last year. So, just keeping it, as you said, pointed in the right direction is doing his job. I wouldn't say he's a very quick amateur. He's kind of middle of the pack of bronzes, but compared to the worst driver at this race in that category, he was stellar.
I could be.
It might be something. It might be something down to a certain driver being 12 seconds a lap slower. But
we're not no mentions of who that certain driver is going to be.
Treasure.
Yeah, it was on the whole, I think, a very good race from that team, and Fritz has come a long way, and we should hopefully be seeing them become a more consistent fixture at the top of the LMP2 field. They are third in the championship at the moment. They actually jumped Yoda Sport, so they're sitting in third, and with, I think that's 3 third places and a win. So a pretty impressive resume so far this season. So the switch to the Orica again, proving fruitful for the team. We should talk though about the incident between Laurent and Van Aert, because that was quite a scary moment with the Alpine car basically becoming a carbon tub with not too much else connected to it on the back straight heading into Blanchimont. Anyone want to take the reins on describing what happened?
Basically, it was just a case of, was it the Red River Sport Ferrari as well? Yep. So Fritz went to the right into Blanchimont as you would passing traffic. Laurent went to the left. Fritz went to take his racing line. Probably saw the Bicolor's car in his mirror and thought, there's a prototype there. There's no prototype in that space. I can go to take my normal race through Blanchimont so I don't end up in the weeds, which, is fair enough. Unfortunately, didn't quite see Tommy with 2 wheels on the grass. Bit of a contact, and Tommy's ended up base over apex at a very quick part of the track.
Yeah, it was not pretty seeing the remains of the Alpine there. And it basically threw the front right tyre all the way down the road, almost made it to the bus stop, the front right tyre. The tub was almost shredded to pieces, but luckily Laurent got out the car without any major injuries. He was mostly okay. But in terms of Signatech Alpine looking towards Le Mans, they've had 2 chassis written off in the space of 2 months since we've restarted racing. So they would be scrambling to pick together a replacement chassis for their 2-car tilt at Le Mans.
Especially seeing that, according to Graham Goodwin, there weren't any spares when the ELMS crash happened.
Yeah, so they actually had to use the Alpine car from the WEC to run at Paul Ricard. So not ideal for them, but it was classified as a racing incident. Both parties had the same few of events, and
I think everyone did.
Yeah, so
tragic accident. That's all it was.
And it really pulled the Alpine car out of a very competitive position, because provided they were in that battle for the end. They could have very easily taken another podium. They certainly had the pace.
Oh, most definitely. Laurent's battle with Di Resta going too wide through Origin Radion.
Whoa. Whoa.
That was some driving it. I don't know. Do we know why Thomas lost his Toyota test drive? He has to have something else lined up, surely.
I don't know. Does anyone have any idea? Anyone in the chats? Anyone at all?
Because he's too good a driver to not be in the P1 car for very long.
Alpine, they might be doing a LMDH. So.
Yeah, that's a good
Maybe.
point.
And who does he drive for right now? So
True.
He's found himself in the right seat at the right time, potentially. And just a very coincidental point on the Alpine incident. It brings to an end the longest continuous points scoring run in WEC competition for that car. Ironically, at 36 races.
Great stat.
That's one of those stats that you just can't make up because it's just too perfect. Don't you just love it how sports like that sometime? It's that's one of the reasons I love just sport in general, because the cliche stuff is allowed to happen and not be cliched, because that is hilarious. I mean, besides the fact that it was a quite terrifying accident, a stat like that is hilarious.
I want to pose to you guys.
Yeah.
It comes down to, if you were on the back of the grid like Racing Team Nederland were, do you think they did the strategy right, where you put your fastest driver in and bring you to the front, but then you've still backloaded with your kind of penalty of driving with a bronze? Whereas Cool Racing flipped that completely on its head, and they started Quan Yi, who is not that good a driver, let's be honest, in the wet behind the safety car to burn some of that time, and then have the fast Nico Lapierre to finish, to then overtake Fritz van Eerd in the slower, backloaded Racing Team Nederland car. With hindsight, which one would you do? Because if you put Fritz in the car to start with, they wouldn't be overtaking the GTs that easily, and they might not be then in contention with the pros.
And I think that's the key point, and why you'd start Fritz, right? Why you wouldn't start with Fritz, why you'd start with one of your quick guys. I think that they just got unlucky that it rained so heavy they started under safety car. Had the race started 20 minutes later, that wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, it's an interesting little dilemma there. And of course, the risk is with your Am driver in the car in those conditions, you're potentially more likely to suffer an incident which will end your entire race. So it worked. In the end, history will show that the Cool Racing strategy was the better of the two, because they did finish second, with Lapierre in the car chasing down Van Eerd in the closing stages to make that position. But I don't know. It's a difficult one. I think for Racing Team Nederland, after what happened at Fuji, or not last year, but the year before in 2018, where they did that strategy of putting Fritz in at the beginning in the wet conditions, and it went terribly. So much so that Fritz actually came out and blasted the team for making that decision. I think they would err on the side of maybe giving one of the pros a run.
I think, though, he had slicks on at the time, so I think that was maybe the more important anger-inducing point.
Still, though, I wouldn't like a tall, angry Dutchman running at me after a stint.
A tall, angry, rich Dutchman.
That too. Yeah, what would you think, Ollie? What would your choice be?
Hindsight, I think I would definitely go with the Cool strategy, because there was a nice safety car to punch it up mid-race, I think, when the rain came back. But yes, I don't know. I think when the race is all congested from the back of the grid, it's kind of a bit risky as well to try and put your amateur to navigate that. The GTs and the prototypes, they corner differently, they brake differently, they accelerate differently. So having that kind of mismatch might be a bit too much. I don't know if if Fritz is nervous or if it's just he makes me nervous in those situations. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of torn. That's why I wanted to ask that question.
It's certainly a good question, and we did see a few instances of what you were describing, the difference between the prototypes and the GT cars cause a few issues. I think there was a situation where one of the United car went off while passing an Aston Martin and basically pushed the Aston Martin off into the weeds as well. So yeah, I would tend to... I would play the percentage play and put the Pro in, but if you are able to put the Am in and have it be successful like Cool Racing did, then that's probably a better, safer strategy. And in the end, it worked for Cool. They finished second ahead of Racing Team Netherlands. United Autosports, as we mentioned, took the win. They extend their championship lead now to 22 points over the Jackie Chan DC car, who we mentioned had a shocker. So that's gone entirely the other way around for them. And then in fourth was the Yoda car. Settler Racing actually had a pretty anonymous race to finish fifth, which is still a pretty impressive result. Then it was the Jackie Chan DC car who had problems, High Class Racing who had problems, and Eurasia Motorsport who had problems. And then
driver problem.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but if you're 8 seconds off the pace, it's probably not a good sign for your start of your career.
For Eurasia?
Yeah, for your start of your campaign for Le Mans, I should say.
Well, I mean, let's not forget that Yamanaka probably hasn't raced at Spa before, so that's might be a factor in it.
Maybe just feel like this car's meant to have Gizzy in it.
Yeah, I am dirty about that too. Damn it, this is meant to be the year. Let's press on to GTE-Pro, and this was a very interesting mixed race. There were battles all the way through, as we've come to expect with GTE-Pro, but the interesting part was that different cars had different levels of pace throughout the race in different conditions. And what surprised me was that the car that had the most pace in the wet conditions was not the Porsche, not the Aston Martin, it was the Ferrari. Who would have expected that?
Well, Ferrari knew that they were going to be strong because they knew the wet race was the only chance of them succeeding.
Surely the BOP wasn't that bad for the Ferrari.
Well, if you listen to James Collado, it was, but who listens to James Collado about BOP?
Exactly.
But I mean, what is it? It's about a second between all 6 cars in the dry. Extrapolate out to what? 1.5 in the wet, 2 seconds in the wet?
And
it wasn't too bad.
Yeah. Well, Ollie, you've again done the analysis that you've just put up in our chat room here. What did you extract from that sort of data?
I think it's more of a setup thing rather than a car dynamics, inherent property thing, because the class completely switches on its head in the rain. In the dry, the Ferrari was clearly the slower chassis in the class, but then in the rain it was really, really competitive. And yeah, the Porsche fastest in the dry, but then flip it on its head, and it was the slowest by a margin in the rain. So, and then the Aston Martin was kind of in the middle for both, but whilst still competitive in both. If this was a setup decision, I think Porsche pretty much nailed it because they had quite a long run into the flag. I think 2.5 hours that were dry. So when you want to be competitive is when you're closing down the race to the flag. So I think if it was a setup thing, then I think Porsche nailed it.
And what intrigues me about that plot the most is the significant gap between the two Porsches in the dry. Now, this is something we've seen all season, that the 92 car has significantly more pace than the 91, but I didn't expect it to be to the tune of a second to a second and a half per lap in the same conditions between the two cars. That to me is ridiculous, and that kind of shows the difference in their finishing positions, with the 92 taking the class win, the 91 finishing in 5th place and not really challenging.
It was really noticeable during the race because I think they had like a split strategy, and I think it was the 92 that was chasing down the 91, and it just ate up the gap in a handful of laps, and then was right on its bumper. And then maybe team orders, maybe it was just a simple overtake, and then a couple of laps later it was gone.
Yeah.
Just up the road. So maybe a split strategy with more of a fuel save, I don't know, but yeah, it was ridiculous.
Or a setup difference as well, perhaps, because it just looked, every single battle the 91 got involved in, it seemed like it had no teeth. And in the end, they got used as a guinea pig to swap to the slicks in the second drying period, which I think really allowed the 92 to nail the right crossover point, because they had that data coming in from the other side of the garage. In the end, though, it was the 92 who won, not just through outright pace, although they were in the box seat with that in the latter stages, but they actually run on a fuel run. They came in, I think, just on the hour mark to the finish, and managed to stretch that fuel all the way to the very end, whereas the Aston Martin number 97 car, who was in contention for that battle for the lead, couldn't do the same. So that is certainly encouraging going into Le Mans, to have that extra little bit of fuel saving up your sleeve.
Oh, for sure. Going an extra lap at Le Mans can make all the difference. Also interesting to note that the Aston team were actually very open on radio about chasing a penalty for the 92.
Yeah.
Which it was completely thrown out. I think the stewards were like, no, about it.
Yeah, that's a bit of a weird one, that one.
Yeah, it was a bit of a dick move. But yeah, so I enjoyed the GTE-Pro battle. It wasn't huge, I don't think, on-track action, but really intriguing end of the race there. And yeah, the Porsche GT team, as you'd expect on a fuel run, just seemed to be the best at it.
And it's quite interesting that the Porsches, despite having similar pace in both the WC and the IMSA competition at the moment, have found a significantly better swathe of results in the WEC while struggling over in IMSA. It's a very sort of mixed bag at the moment between the two outfits.
Which IMSA seems to be all about the fuel runs lately.
Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting that the Porsches haven't been able to show their real colours in there. Yeah. Any other thoughts on LMP, GTE-Pro before we push on to the very end?
Not from me.
I'm glad the balance of performance is pretty competitive. The auto BOP system is proving to work well, and hopefully this goes on to Le Mans. We don't have a crap balance of performance like we've kind of grown to expect over the last 3 years, and take it further into next season with the hypercars.
I don't necessarily agree that we've had a crap balance of performance at Le Mans, but
who's got an anniversary this year? I don't know.
Me, my first. Oh wait, you meant on the race.
Hey, doesn't Le Mans fall like the day after your birthday this year, Kris?
It goes birthday, Le Mans, first anniversary.
Wow. There you go. That's
after 5 days.
That's a weekend.
And lockdown ends just before that as well.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Okay. So Kiwi's having a good week that week.
I'll take a month off work.
Oh, good plan. Good plan. So that was GTE-Pro. It was Porsche, then the pair of Astons. The Aston Martin holds the manufacturer championship at the moment, and also with the 95 car, the drivers championship at the moment. Over the 92, so that's your two major players for the manufacturers championship. We'll touch on GTE-Am because I think GTE-Am kind of got lost. Similar to how LMP3 gets lost in an ELMS race. There was just the LMP2 battle was enthralling from start to finish. The messiness with the weather really changed the shape of things. And then when there wasn't anything else going on, the GTE-Pro battles were really up front and center. So yeah, GTE-Am kind of got a little bit lost. But it was very clear to see who the quick drivers were in the race, and that were the cars, the 83 and the 77 car were the quick pair, and in the end it was the 83 car that had more in the bank come the end of the race, despite having the larger handicap, the success ballast, to take another victory.
I think the story of that GTE-Am was people not wanting to win it. Early on, you had the Proton racing car, and that fell away completely. You had TF Sport, they fell away.
And they came back, though. They came back, and they actually ended up finishing on the podium, which was a surprise to me, because I didn't really see them throughout much of the race at all. But yeah, I was surprised that the Project One car struggled so much after being so competitive in the early stages.
Yeah.
Any particular insight as to why that was?
Nothing that I'm aware of. It might have just been the fact the Am driver went in at that point, and they sort of really fell away.
Yeah, Keating was kind of a bit off this race for me. In the wet, he was a couple of seconds off. In the dry, he was a couple of seconds off the fastest. And we're not talking of like super bronzes, as it were. That's against Paul Dalla and
Perfetti,
who had, you know, a fair bit of ballast, and I'm not talking as well about success ballast. He's quite a chunky boy. And yeah, so it's kind of a bit off, and especially when you compare it to Bahrain, where he had an absolutely insane first stint, and everyone's sort of bigging him up. This is kind of back into what it was originally before that, you know. It's kind of, this is back to normal. They had as well 15 kilos of ballast, which on the grand scheme of things isn't actually that much when you've got the drivers varying quite a lot. But yes, they were a bit off the pace. Fraga was pretty good, but not so consistent. I was expecting a bit more from him, because he's one of those kind of really super silver drivers, and I think he's going up to gold next season. Well,
depending
this
on
season, but at the end of this season.
Yeah, depending on whether or not they unfreeze the driver ratings, which they've been talking about.
Yes, quite a mess. And then I think the thing that really broke the back of the race for the 83 AF Corsa Brittany car was the fact that they have a pro Ferrari factory driver in GT World Challenge as their amateur silver.
Yeah.
So, in the if you compare their stints, it's just Nicholas Nielsen is going on from strength to strength ever since he got picked up by Ferrari as their young pro. It's kind of a bit broken, as it were, because they had as well 15 kilos of success ballast, but it didn't really make that much of a difference. Perodo was still pretty quick himself in the car, regardless of ballast. So
yeah,
I think they are now, for the run-in, the favourites.
Yeah. Honestly, they're the only team you can really look at the moment, because again, you've done some very nice analysis on these plots for us, plotting lap time, and you compare Nicholas Nielsen for silver laps compared to everyone else. After 5 laps, he's got a second on the rest of the field, and even Perodo is arguably the best bronze driver. You know, compare him to Christian Reed and Didio Perfetti. You know, they're the 3 that really stand out when you look at those plots. But yeah, the silver plot is really what's telling, because you look at the other silvers that they're in contention with. You know, Ross Gunn, an AMR factory driver, a young driver, is 2 or 3 seconds. Well, yeah, by the end of a stint, 2 or 3 seconds away from where Nicholas Nielsen is. Same with Charlie Eastwood. Felipe Frago's that far off the pace after 10 laps. Lawrence Hoare, who is the silver driver in the 56 Team Project One car, was 2 seconds off the pace, or 1 second off the pace, on his fastest lap compared to Nicholas Nielsen, and falls off the plot halfway through the analysis that you put together. So it is really the silver driver in that instance that is being the point of difference in these teams. And yeah, Nicholas Nielsen is is terrifyingly good, is the truth, for a silver, which he shouldn't be, but he is for now.
It shows what you got to do to be competitive. You know, it's not a class at the back where it's all fun and games. You know, it's serious, and you've got to be taking these measures to finding the next young pro factory driver to be able to compete. You know, Lawrence Orr is doing okay, I guess. I don't really follow Super Cup, but I think he's a Porsche Super Cup driver. And you would think picking up a young Porsche Super Cup driver would be enough to be competitive. But, you know, Perfetti was one of the fastest bronzes, and they've got a really competitive driver lineup except for the silver. The silver's not bad, but it's what's making the difference.
Yeah, and in GTE-Am with the bronze driver requirement, with the silver driver requirement as well, finding someone who can be your point of difference has proven to be very fruitful. And it seems like the 83 car, who, by the way, Collard and Perotto themselves are a very good duo. Adding Nielsen to that has shown that they've easily been the team to beat. And if you look at the championship as well, they are just head and shoulders above everyone else at the moment, to the tune of 12 points ahead of TF Sport, who, as I said, had a good race to finish third. They were kind of anonymous through the middle and came back. And then if you look to the rest of the field, they're 20 points away.
Don't forget though, TF Sport had a pretty bad Bahrain round.
Yeah, well,
they've won 3 races this season, so you can't discount them just yet.
This is true, and Charlie Eastwood is probably was the closest to Nicholas Nielsen in the Spa race for the most part. So yeah, they're really showing their colours and their ability at the moment. And one final thing I just want to quickly say before we close up on the WEC and just quickly chat about ELMS. Paul Dall'Anna, he's not had a happy return to racing at all, has he?
No.
With the incident at Paul Ricard, another incident here where he ended up in the gravel trap and brought out the safety car, and that car also raced at Spa for the ELMS as well, didn't it? And I don't think it did that tremendously. Hasn't been an ideal run into Le Mans for the big Canadian.
They trying to, the amateurs, I think there were 5 entries that did the LMS, and they're trying to get either the seat time that they paid for before COVID, for the season.
Yeah.
After rounds were cancelled and stuff like that. But yeah, I think this has been probably the worst season for him, because even way back, like, he was getting punted by Hoshino in lap 1 at Fuji, and yeah, spins, crashes. He had the penalty at Paul Ricard for taking off the legality panel of the P3. It's kind of not been his year at all.
Nah, not at all. And that's despite taking 4 podiums this season in WEC as well. So we're saying that he's had a poor season, but it's still 4 podiums, so it can't be too bad. But yeah, not quite the run into Le Mans that you would want. So we've been going on for an hour now. We'll wrap it up real quick we'll just go through quickly the results. AF Corsa from Dempsey Proton from TF Sport. The 56 ended up in 4th, 88 Dempsey Proton with a few ring-ins in 5th, and then a bit more anonymity down the end of the field. ELMS this weekend, back to Paul Ricard, Twilight race this evening. Can anyone beat United Autosports?
No.
Can anyone beat United Autosports in P3?
No. Maybe.
It would certainly look that way, seeing as they've taken, I think, 3 of the possible 4 class wins so far in the ELMS this season.
Prototypes.
What was that, sorry?
Prototypes, because they aren't doing GT.
Yeah, sorry. Well, possible. No. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, whatever.
Oh, they went to the Porsche 911 and probably win that too.
Hey, don't tempt them.
Well, they just bought. Who did they just buy?
They just bought someone.
Tracker.
Yes. Really?
So
Really?
GTE around the corner potentially.
Oh, yes, of course.
We're just going to be entering a United Racing dynasty. God damn. Okay.
Does that mean
Outdo's the evil empire.
Does that mean the because team's going to be known as Walkinshaw Andrew the United Stracker?
Oh my god, stop. Stop. It'll be the evil empire with tea and crumpets by the end of the season. And what about GTE? The GTE competition. We've seen podiums from Iron Lynx and Proton, and AF Corsa and Aston Martin. Who do we think might have the upper hand when we go back to Paul Ricard?
Question.
Honestly, if I'd expect it to go pretty similar to the first race we had at Paul Ricard. So I reckon they'll be between the Porsche and the Kessel Racing team.
Yeah, it's pretty fair. I'm pretty sure it's a Saturday night race with the twilight.
Yep, so it's at 2 a.m. our time.
Oh, bloody hell. Okay. Because that's echoing what it should have been at Barcelona. So we'll have race threads up tomorrow, assuming that I get this podcast edited and up tonight.
A question that I wanted to ask you, Michael, is in hindsight with where Europe is right now in terms of second wave of COVID and things like that, sod's law, it would have been better to have the 24 hours a couple of weeks ago when the Spa round was, because, you know, we've already had one team with a driver test positive, and it was a pretty competitive driver. It was Gabby Albury, a super silver in the Jackie Chan DC Racing team, and he had to pull out because of quarantining and stuff like that. I foresee this to be happening at least once more, and we're going to have probably some late adjustments to the driver lineups, and also let's not forget the potential of quarantine. Yep. Because if there is a week's worth of quarantine, that affects travel from drivers competing around the world. And we talk a lot about clashes being on the same weekend. Well, now we've got potential of quarantine. I'm not quite sure on the French guidelines or laws at the moment, but we're going to have clashes from consecutive weekends because you've got to make sure that you are in France before the weekend before.
Yeah. So
that affects GT World Challenge Europe Sprint, which is the big one, DTM, Asian GT, Super GT, for example. They're all on the weekend before. And to be able to qualify or be at qualifying, then these drivers are going to have to pull out of their respective regional championships. And, you know, it's going to be hard to find replacements. Gabriel Albury's replacement was pretty straight swap with Ryan Cullen coming in from ELMS, Dragon Speed. But for Le Mans, it's different. Yeah. The drivers have to do the safety tests, the simulator work. It's not a straight swap. So I think there are going to be some casualties from the entry list, maybe because there aren't enough drivers that are qualified that have done the simulator work in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, bit of a, I don't know, not quite a rant, but
yeah, a bit
not
of
really
a question. Yeah, well, I mean, your concerns, I think, around the timing of the event in September are valid. They've certainly... I haven't been keeping on top of the worldwide situation because it's been too much of an onslaught of information to me to really keep on top of it, but I think we were going to run into this sort of situation regardless of when it was, because it's been so unpredictable and it's been constantly changing, and it just so happens that now is the time where things are beginning to resurface and problems are beginning to arise again. The quarantining situation is certainly going to throw everything through a loop. We've already, just provisionally looking at the entry list, we've already lost 3 cars from a total entry list, so we're down from 62 to 59. If more drivers or teams encounter cases which get into their bubbles and require teams to pull out or quarantine or that sort of thing, it could lead to a very mixed grid, not only of cars, but of teams, of drivers, of nationalities. It could end up with, for example, if someone in the Toyota garage acquires a case, then all of a sudden we could see Toyota pull out of Le Mans. It could just be a random mess of an event at the end of the day. I certainly hope not, but it's certainly a concern as well. I think there has been, at least in my part of the road, there has been significant resistance to grant exceptions to the quarantining rules, especially for people who aren't essential travelers, who don't need to be moving around. And you could argue that Le Mans is not an essential event, especially with no spectators. So, yeah, I don't know. It's certainly a mixed one.
I mentioned the drivers that have to not be rookies, as it were, and in the Le Mans regulations, a rookie is someone who's been away for, let's say, 4 years. I don't know the number, but
it's 5 years.
5 years. There we go. So, who could drive for Toyota then? That's driven for them in the last 5 years, that doesn't drive for them now, that could be a nice substitute.
Fernando Alonso? Alex Wirtz?
Oh yeah.
just riding that Alonso train as far as we can go.
He's coming back.
Oh, please don't. Oh, don't open that door again. Was that entire preamble just a setup for an Alonso to Le Mans joke?
No, but it's what came to me. So.
Serendipity. Thank you very much for joining me, Ollie and Kris.
Pleasure.
Thank you for joining us in the chat tonight, and we'll hand it over now to Austin and Kris for their catch-up of IMSA action live at Road America.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, everyone. This is Endurance Chat, and a special edition of Endurance Chat. This is a live edition of Endurance Chat, in person, at location, at one of my favorite, if not the favorite of most Americans, racetrack in North America, Road America in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. And with me today, I have the pleasure of our first, Americanized live in-person interview with two people from actually Endurance Chat from the U.S., Kris Washer 97. Kris, how are you, sir?
It's blessed to be here in SCCA Cat and the Kettle Majors weekend. The event that we're going to absolutely talk nothing about.
Yeah. You were looking forward to this race weekend all of 2 days, right, Kris?
Yeah, all of 2 days. IMSA, NASCAR, they don't compare to this. I mean, we just had a Dodge Neon flip in turns 1 and 2. Some Spec Racer foreheads just jump over each other. There's no video boards at the track. We can't see it.
No, we're all going off of rumors. And
this is just rumors.
It recants the days of old where you never had video projection or those newfangled technologies. You always just heard it over the loudspeaker that they're like, car 22 is on fire. Oh, okay. Well, that's great.
Okay.
That's fantastic. But yeah, so we're I guess none better, to recap the IMSA, which is what we're going to do here today, as the title will suggest, with our podcast for this one, that we're going to recap some of the events that happened, which happened here, and you were attending of that one, and I attended the one in Sebring, and the one we already talked about, Daytona. So we'll recap those. We'll talk about the upcoming rounds, some schedule changes, obviously, with some of the states hosting some of these rounds, not being able to even host some of these, or allow some of these events, and organizers to even organize these events in general. So we have to move these events. So we'll talk about that, as well as any of the news and notes from the last month or two from IMSA, which has basically been you almost want to have news, but then you almost don't, because if it's news now, it's probably gonna be bad news, or
someone dropping out, or
because all of the COVID stuff, but then you don't want to have no news, because then you're like, okay, well, that's,
do we have anybody coming
ominous.
In next year?
Right? Yeah, exactly. So you want tepid, just really, really just gentle news, everything's sort of okay, So, and we'll kind of start that way. Both of the races had decent car counts, and really that is the main takeaway, I think, from IMSA, at least, that their main core, which you could say versus SRO versus VLN versus ACO don't have the amount of draw potentially for cars in North America to like go to these events. And it's really nice to see that it's only dropped 20%, sometimes 30%, that kind of thing.
We still have about around more than 30 cars overall in the entry list. It's
right.
Something, the other GT series in the States is, can't say that. So
whatever is going on with the SRO stuff, stateside I feel bad for that because they always, it felt like they should have gotten more love from a lot of different things. And because of now all the title changes too, with Blancpain now leaving, they're kind of like flirting a little bit in the wind here, not knowing too much what is going to happen.
Well, and the fact that the main class of that championship, you had like Volvo sedans and Cadillacs and like 10 years ago. And now they try to make it more GT3.
Yeah.
And they kind of raised the price up. So now you only get, 7 full-time GT3 cars.
Oh, man.
And they had to add, they have the GT Sports Club, but there's like the GT2 stuff and then like an old Audi R8 they had, Sonoma, which dominated, made some people mad. But you only got like, I think 12 entries overall with that. So you're not looking too good. But so I'm just glad to say that IMSA, we have more than like 12 GT3 cars on our grid.
Yeah. And then working your way down through Prototype Challenge, which I think had over 20 from all the rounds that they were doing.
They had 13 here at Road America, but that still produced a pretty decent race.
Okay, gotcha. I think they had a bit more at Sebring, so that's why I thought it was probably skewed more higher. But yeah, I mean, even Pilot Challenge, good car counts as well. So like that is a great sign in terms of at least from where we're at now. And I mean, I feel like out of any sport that needs to exist and keep running, it's motorsport, and I'm glad to see they're able to continue running and stay running so far. So we'll hopefully see once the season's over with all the schedule changes. And because of the location too, it's more on the East Coast, and most of these teams, I think our majority, like a bunch of them are based on like east of the Mississippi, I think.
Yeah.
Like, if we wanted to do the old NASCAR like adage of where all they are based in Charlotte and then they're one out in Denver and all that other stuff. But I mean, that could be another, like, we're trying to think of cost advantage for a lot of these teams too, because it is tight budgets and the IMSA does charge a lot.
Even if there was teams out west, they're kind of screwed anyway, because most of the states out west, they don't allow any. California, they just,
like Seca.
Laguna Seca just had to cancel IndyCar and IMSA.
Or WeatherTech Raceway, excuse me.
WeatherTech,
yeah. TM.
So. Not sponsored. Cooper McNeil's having us at gunpoint.
Well, okay, so you watch Sebring on TV, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so let's do that. Let's start with the person who saw it on TV first. How did you like Sebring?
It wasn't too exciting.
Yeah.
I gotta be honest. Like the start of it, I think we had the Porsches bumping into each other, but other than that, I don't think if there was battles, TV direction wasn't really showing them.
Okay.
It was kind of like,
Yeah.
I was like, when's IndyCar starting?
That is probably the one thing I will say, and I know Flood is probably like chuckling to himself because he has this weird dislike of Sebring, and so to hear probably you, and then he will hear me say that it was also somewhat of a boring race. He'll also laugh too when I'll say that I think the track is way better when it's more traffic, more cars, like probably 40 plus, and then that track gets super interesting.
I think that might be the same with any track.
That's true, but I feel like at Sebring though, it's just kind of like, especially if you have the right setup and know how to kind of handle the bumps, or like how your car handles the bumps correctly, like there is a huge, you just see huge gap separations, and I feel like the traffic plays so much into that track more, especially thick traffic, than you would have at like Mid Ohio, something like that.
Well, yeah, we had like a 20 car difference compared to a regular 12-hour race.
It was like a half. It was half the grid basically. That was not there. So, but yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you. The only thing was that I really enjoyed how Sebring did the whole response to the pandemic thing, where with the 5,000 people,
and they were all like Florida residents, right?
Only Florida residents, even though you can have a Florida resident buy the ticket and just give it to somebody else. I don't believe they were checking IDs, or if you did, or again, you could just, there was easy ways around it, that kind of thing. But still, people were being respectful about it, and the places that you could go, it was limited, but it wasn't that bad. And I don't know, I thought it was going to be way worse just weather-wise, and it ended up not being that at all. There was a weather front that was a little bit north that was pushing west. and for some reason it like sucked all the humidity out. So we had like, it was like, I think 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and that's usually where it's just terribly hot, especially in the middle of Florida. And anybody that knows or has been in Florida in the summer knows it's absolutely terrible. But like, that was probably the best weather that I've been to at Sebring in a long time. It was just so good, like mid 70s, little humidity, slight breeze, cloudy, and you had a 2.5 hour race. It was so great. But yeah, I mean, what you weren't seeing battle to battle fighting. I mean, you weren't seeing a lot. Like at the initial part, you saw that Mazda try to overtake a little bit, kind of heading into the hairpin. But beyond that, yeah, it was just the race settled in, and the favorites kind of like had their way with it. So I don't know. It was a mad race, but I did take a first time race fan, and he enjoyed the hell out of it. And I think that was a 2 hour 40-minute race is a good race to take like a first time fan to. It's just like it's just enough, especially if it's like a boring race like that, for it to be like, all right, like yeah, like all right, yeah, it was fun. It was kind of boring, but you know, like it's fun. Like we're good. Like we're gonna go now. Fun. Like yeah, this is great.
That 10-second gap to the lead.
Oh, it's a finish. Oh well, that happened so quick, you know. So I enjoyed it from that aspect, but yeah, it. I wish there was more competition in just like GTE-Am or DPI, because it felt like the Cadillacs still were just better at Sebring, which they always seem to be right now.
Yeah.
It's like Daytona and Sebring, they're just super, super good. Except for somehow Mazda winning at Daytona, so that doesn't fit my theory. But yeah, I had a great time at it, despite the fact that, yeah, I agree with you, it was a boring race. So.
Oh, you think you said you only went on the Saturday, correct?
Yes, only one
Friday
Saturday.
was a monsoon. Well, you didn't even get a race in for the pilot challenge on that Friday. So
yeah, I was gonna yeah. So they had the Porsche prototype challenge, and then they had the Pilot Sport Cup or Pilot Sport.
I think they had the Michelin Pilot Challenge on that Friday. That was the only race that day. Then they had Prototype Challenge before the main IMSA race on that
11
Saturday.
11 o'clock in the morning. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. We were gonna go to that, and it just ended up not happening. My buddy just kind of. And so we ended up going later on in the afternoon. I'm kind of bummed that I didn't go, because that was a crazy race. They were just nuts out there, like the Prototype Challenge guys. Like they were just like spinning out, like running into each other. It was awesome. It was a great, entertaining race. But there was just a lot of like driver talent issues in that race.
I've always kind of, because I think last year I watched some of them, and there's like lots of gaps far, between the cars, and the finish was. Well, then look at Sebring with all the wrecks that happened, and I Road America, which will delve in deeper. Fucking late race. I have to bleep that out. The late race controversy with the checkered flag falling a lap later. Mm-hmm. It was like a Trans Am 2 at Mid Ohio thing where they have to revert. It was like, okay,
yeah, all right. Like, wait, we got the checkered. Oh, that was the checkered flag. All right, yeah. But no, I mean like. So yeah, I mean beyond that. The number 31 Whalen Engineering Cadillac wins, as I was kind of basically hinting at there. I mean, it was not really a challenge. I mean, I don't think they led everything except like 2 or 3 laps.
Yeah, there wasn't no battlefield lead or anything at all.
Yeah,
no like unusual pit stop strategy that's going on.
Only
like,
maybe one safety car.
Yeah,
for that was with an LMP2 conking out. Which I have a funny story about the end result for LMP2, because that's basically it. We don't need to talk about LMP2 too much anymore. It was just like that. That's what they caused the safety car by a car conking out, and then they refired it. Control Delete refired it, and then that caused the only real drama in the race, because GTD was a Lexus show, and again they have not really nerfed the Lexus yet, noticeably at all for 2020 outside of the was it post Daytona. I think they did something. They did a BOP change after Daytona that might have nerfed the Lexus a little bit, but it wasn't enough because they just continued to kill everybody. But yeah, GTE-Am during that safety car went for pit stops, and they touched their noses a bit, and had some contact in the pits, which basically caused both the cars to take themselves out of contention with. One of the cars having to basically sit there and get their nose replaced, so they went like either a lap or 2 down, or they had to get some stuff fixed. And then the sister car, which clipped the nose and ripped that off, basically then had a slow tire, which then cut the tire at like the worst spot, but then also the best spot of the track. which it's turn 1, so you have to go all the way around because you cut your right rear tire. But they like I don't know who was driving. It might have been Tandy, but it was like coming out of just enough out of turn 1, and he managed to like save it from hitting the wall, and that was probably the save of the race for me at Sebring. But that was the only real exciting moment, was basically like that caution period, Porsche contact, and then the Porsche cutting a tire and almost hitting the wall at turn 1 at like 150 miles an hour. But yeah, still, those Porsches are crazy, man. Porsche drivers are nuts. They go crazy. But yeah, that's about all I can really say about Sebring. I mean, I think it was a decent filler race. Like,
it's something, you know.
Like it would have
fill
been
the
Long
calendar.
Beach, you know, it would have been a mid-Ohio, so like that kind of sucks. But what can you do? You know,
yeah.
I don't know. It's a one in a whatever shot of basically getting a race like that at Sebring ever. So we will probably never see a race like that again. So I don't know. I think for the novelty of it, I enjoy going to it. So, but yeah. Next up, we went to my former stomping ground. Your stomping ground.
Yeah.
Road America in Elkhart Lake, my home state, and yeah, I've gone to a few of these. I've gone when there's some Nissans. I've gone when there's some DPs. So how was the COVID Road America experience for IMSA weekend for you, sir?
Apart from, I think the paddock was closed off, but you could still kind of walk through it, look at the cars. They just had little gates, like the stuff you see like at the ends of the apron of like a wrestling match. Those things, blocking off the cars and team personnel. Other than that, I went on the Saturday and Sunday. I went and caught. Let's see, I think the first race on the Saturday was the Prototype Challenge, and that was the one where there's some interesting fuel strategy where I think the leader at the time, they pitted a little bit earlier because they thought the checkered flag was going to come out like right at the elapsed time. So basically, when the elapsed time came, like the clock ran out when they were on like the bottom of the hill on the front stretch, and they didn't wave the checkered. And so the leader ran out of fuel, and it caused this big kind of jumble up at the front. And later on in the day, they, you know, because I think the r/WEC Discord caught it, or Diapo did, or some sports car Discord caught it. It's like, this is where time elapsed. This is where the leader was. They screwed him.
Oh, that's so crazy.
And then they reverted to the last lap. If you caught like Trans Am Mid Ohio this year, same sort of situation where they went one lap extra than they should have.
Wow.
Then there's Porsche Cup, which it was Porsche Cup, you know, big gaps. It was a decent filler. Then you had the Pilot Challenge, which I was on the inside of turn 1 for most of the race. And it was a decent race. I believe there's an Aston Martin that was leading for most of the race. I can't remember what happened to it, but then I don't even remember who won the race overall.
That was under yellow because of
that's right. There was a huge crash. There's a Mercedes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was actually right there in that turn 6, 7, and 8 complex.
Yeah.
Where I believe it was the Murillo Mercedes. It went off, the Murillo Mercedes actually a lap before. It went off sort of out in the grass and dirt a bit, but kept on going. Then the next lap later, it did it again, but it kept control, went whatever. Then there's that, I can't remember the team name, but I think Billy Johnson,
the Mustang?
No, it was a Mercedes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's who he's driving.
Billy Johnson car. I don't know if he was in the car at the time, but he basically followed the line. But there's like a dip. There's like the curb. So in between the curb and the track, there's like the grass, but there's like a dip where it kind of like there's like a bump on the entering the track. I think that's what he did was he caught that and he got loose and spun it and crashed head on to that concrete wall. There's actually a big crack in the wall, right where he.
Man.
Just debris scattered everywhere.
That's crazy. There's been some pretty big hits this weekend too. I mean, wasn't there a hit out, or not this weekend, but this past year for just for racing here? I mean, wasn't there an incident out by the King too, or?
Oh yeah, last week they had the Trans Am series for the NASCAR weekend. Actually, Justin Allgaier did a NASCAR race on the outside of turn 2. He smashed the wall pretty hard, and then. In Trans Am 2, they had a junk in turn 5 that caused a bit of damage. Yeah. That was the first red flag of the race. Then Sam Mayer, which is a young and up-and-comer NASCAR guy who races like an ARCA series and some truck races, he's from Wisconsin, hometown boy. He was going into the kink. I didn't watch the replay of it, but I can't remember if he just hit the kink like head on or something, but his car caught fire and just burned to the ground. And that was, I believe it was like a 10-car like crash at the kink.
Oh my!
Yeah, they had to send like all ambulance, whatever. Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah.
They don't have a video, I'm sure, right?
But they have an onboard from San Mayer's car. The race wasn't broadcasted.
Okay.
Yeah.
Still though, man, I'd like to see that. It's kind of like reminiscent of like that historic wreck of like 2005 or 6 or whatever, right at the front stretch, when they like piled up at the front stretch, starting line.
Oh,
do you remember that? Yeah. Do you remember? Have you ever seen that one?
I don't think so, but there's actually like a Can-Am car a couple weekends ago. It was like during historic, but it flipped right in the front stretch. This past few weeks at Road America has been.
That's what I'm saying, man.
It's been a biohazard, I swear.
Yeah. That's what. It's just kind of like this year has been pretty nuts for wrecks here. I mean, it's just usually it's been. I mean, like it is. It'll bite you. It will, but like it's such a like I don't know. It's such a natural track that it's easy. I feel like for if you're a driver to get into a rhythm with it, like. To kind of get your limit, that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's weird to see so many, like, very, I would say, spectacular incidents. And I would say the Merc at Turn 7, which we're very close to, like, where we're recording this, where that hit, that was a big hit. Obviously, the Can-Am wreck was. That Trans Am pileup, that was huge. And then we're going to get into Sunday, or I think it was Sunday, when the IMSA, when the big boys, WeatherTech guys went out. There was even, that would be like a, and I don't know, this might be a specific, this might be too deep of a cut. This might be like a NASCAR Nixon, like mashup, edition of the IMSA, like when they basically waved, everybody red because it was raining so much because they had an incident out at the kink and one of the Cadillacs, like, aquaplaned basically off track, like right near all the safety vehicles and like skidded in between the safety vehicles. Oh man, I was like, that is classic, that like weird sports car like IMSA mashup kind of video. You would just see that clip in it too. So, but yeah, how was Sunday? Did you guys know that that there was going to be a lot of potential weather?
Actually, I believe on the Friday I was in the group chat in Discord and I was like, hey, look at this weather. I think they called for 30%. It was 80. It was actually 80% chance of rain at the time. And I was like, oh yeah, scattered thunderstorms, like just in case, whatever. So I brought an umbrella, and me and from the guys from the Oppo Discord, they had a campsite in Turn 3. Well, the unfortunate fact was we left all of our stuff at the campsite, and overall during the course of the race, we naturally found ourselves up here in Turn 7, and that's when the heavens opened. Didn't help, we had no car, no golf cart, whatever. We had to walk down there. I think at one point, we just had to shelter in some trees. Hail was starting to come down, like 60 miles per hour winds. Yeah, I was just soaked.
I was getting messages like that too. Yeah, I was like, it's hailing. I'm like, what? That is nuts. Because yeah, I mean, from the TV perspective, from when I was watching in Florida, we'll do counterpoint. I was worried for you guys, but I was 100%. Not enjoying it, but just being glad I was not there because I've been at some really wet race weekends and also some really volatile weather race weekends, which are really not fun. So, especially with hail, dude, that's kind of scary, dude.
Small, it was very, very small.
Still though, man, when you see hail, that's not good. Like that's never a good sign.
It was like, there's like his shirt, how the shirt was like kind of folded up and stuff. And some guy's like, is it hailing? It's like, I don't think so. And I see like a little ice nugget, like just in a fold of a shirt. It's like, oh yeah, it's hailing.
Oh man. Yeah. So, I mean, and it was before the rain, I would say it was a pretty decent race. There was some decent strategy, at least for like, for fuel economy, at least for pit stop strategy, that kind of thing. And I think the rain kind of came in very suddenly too. It wasn't like it was like we saw the front come in. It built kind of up quickly. I thought like when I was looking at it, it didn't really look like anything. But when they switched to radar, when they were doing it on the broadcast, it kind of looked like it was doing like boom, like it was like it kind of blowing up really quickly. So I don't know. I mean, were you guys, like I said, really expecting rain like at the start?
We're still at Turn 7, and we noticed some lightning flashes over to the south of us in Plymouth.
Okay.
And then we're like, oh, that's to the south of us. So we checked the radar. It's like, oh yeah, there's like this big like rain pocket to the south of us. Then like 10 minutes later, like the clouds are kind of getting darker. We're keeping an eye on it. But then all of a sudden, we just start feeling raindrops. Like, oh, that's just started. It was like a plague of frogs just bearing. The race is still green, so like, oh yeah, we looked at.
Yeah.
I believe wasn't it the 31 that crashed, and then it was the Meyer-Shank Acura that went off in turn 1.
Yeah.
Did like a Porsche also crash in turn 1? I can't. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that after that whole thing.
LMP2, there's an Acura Penske LMP2 collision that was on the front stretch, and then the Porsche GTE-Am, the leader, spun.
All the way in the wall, I think?
No, well, spun, recovered.
Okay.
But hit like the T1 wall, but
that's what I thought I saw it.
Didn't do any damage, but like
the Acura
was
smashed.
The rear end of the Acura was toast. It got rear-ended by the LMP2, so
like,
I don't know who that was.
And that was at the point where it started to get like pretty heavy.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, it's green. Like, okay, you'll stay. Well, it's green flag racing. You don't really care.
Right.
But then all of a sudden, yellow, and I was like, oh yeah, we should probably go.
But then it was red, dude. I never
probably lightning strikes in the area as well.
But I've never seen a timed event do that though. It's very interesting, and I do like it. But like it's kind of like the green white checkered NASCAR thing in a weird way. So, but I've never really seen it instituted until now. I don't ever remember them red flagging it at like the 30-minute mark. And I actually do like that as a. And then they
they basically put 30 minutes on the clock instead of letting the clock run down.
Yeah, and just leave it like that. I think that's a great idea.
They started the race so early. It's like it's like okay, do it. It was like it was 11 a.m. local time when they had the green flag.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought that was a great move. So and that kind of still even though it definitely did screw over Mazda because they had made a good strategy and having the two cars and having that kind of pace. I think they did do some sort of a split strategy or something that they were trying at least like to stay out when they saw rain coming and that kind of thing, and to not kind of reward them with that kind of stinks. But at the same time, we got more racing, which I thought was great.
And that was a really good race up front. Like it seems like that balance of performance between the DPIs. If Cadillac was maybe pushed up a little bit, but not too much, they would all be on like equal pace. Because the Mazdas and Acuras are basically like right there.
Yeah,
Cadillacs are a little bit
they
behind,
fight
but
all the time.
Oh, yeah.
It's the Cadillacs that just seem to like
they're either like, way behind or way up front.
They just like kind of so they're like we will not be tamed. You'll either like peg us back too much or we will be overpegged. We cannot be like in the middle. But yeah, the Mazdas and Acuras always like when I was at Daytona and Sebring and then at Road America. They're always fighting. And it feels like that's the right baseline BOP right now. And it's the Cadillac that keeps screwing this up. Because it really does feel like a lot of the GTE-Am stuff exists in those two DPI cars, or like those two like types of cars there. As the Cadillacs just seem to be off balance. That's my take. I don't know. Because I love the Acura and Mazda fights. I love them. They feel like ELMS. They feel like Grand Am. That feels genuine, like old school American prototype racing to me. In those two guys, like those two teams fighting each other. But like the Cadillacs, I don't know. There's something weird about those Cadillacs. So I don't trust them.
No, I don't trust them either.
Those V8 naturally aspirated V8s for some reason. I don't know why. But so overall, obviously a much better race than Sebring, but how did you enjoy the 2 hours and 40-minute race, which it should have been a 6-hour race? I cannot believe
we need a 6-hour race.
They just didn't put the Glen here. Just do the 6-hour race here. God,
Wisconsin literally has no guidelines.
We will do this. If it's the only thing we do as sports car fans, we will somehow make it that they will do a one-off event, like race of 1,000 years type deal at Road America for like a nice, good, long endurance race because it deserves it. It needs multiple pit stops,
I think,
a elongated strategy, multiple drivers, wear the cars down. Like it needs that kind of a race here.
I think the only way we're gonna get that though is probably SRO. I think like a 6-hour, 8-hour race here. We start at like 10 o'clock in the morning.
Oh man.
But
just even thinking about a 10 to 12-hour race, like it would go like 10 to 10. Oh my God. I would just
night racing. Oh my, I would pay $100 for that.
Yeah. Are you kidding me? Just to watch it. And again, if they only did it once, if somehow they got whatever authority it may be to do it, and they got it here for like a 12-hour, and God forbid a 24-hour race.
Oh my God.
Oh man. All right. Anyway.
Camping is booked.
Yeah, I'm doing it. Yeah. There's going to be 2 booked immediately for sure. But yeah, it was a great race. So yeah, so that Mazda did not win.
Nope.
They
probably should have though.
They should have at least. Really, I mean, obviously now 2020, but like hindsight 2020, but they should have definitely had one of the Mazdas pit when all of the other Cadillacs were pitting because they still were.
Yeah,
I think behind the number 10, I believe at the time.
And I believe when they were going to restart the race, it was still on slicks. One of the Mazdas were.
Yeah, the leading Mazda was still on slicks, and then the other Mazda was buried in the back, but because they waited until it went to safety car, and then they pit, I think. So everybody else had pit. So even if like the number 10 had gotten lucky, whatever. But if they had just pit the moment that everybody else started to pit, they still would have either like lost. They would have lost that position, which I think they were either in second or third. I think they were in second because they had passed the Acura. So they would have lost it to the 10 at least, and maybe another Cadillac. But you had the pay, like you were the fat, they clearly were the fat at the point of the field. So you got to assume like you can pass those guys, you can get around them. So. But they just did not do that, and it didn't work out for them, unfortunately. But hey, that's the racing gods for you sometimes. And yeah, but that paved the way for another Cadillac win, though. So I think right?
No. I think it was the number 6.
Oh, that was it was the sister car. It was number 6. It was number 6, not the or was it? Yeah, it was the Ricky Taylor. So that would have been the number 6.
Number 7, actually.
Yeah.
That's catching up. Because the 6, I believe, had an incident.
Yeah, the 6 was the front stretch incident.
I can't remember. It was it went on the way on the inside just after turn 5, trying to pass the lap car, and then it got clipped in the rear end. And a piece of bodywork is kind of trailing, so they go in the pits.
That was fighting with the Mazda. But then, its race was retired during the incident before the red flag with the LMP2 in the front stretch during wet conditions. So Montoya was like slowing down and got plowed into in the rear. So, but yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, here I'm thinking like Cadillac was dominating. No, the Acura because and then I remember the post race interview now. So it's like it's all coming back to me very very vividly now that I'm here. As we're listening to a hill climb or an autocross.
Yeah, SCCA autocross.
Yeah,
they're doing that in conjunction with the races here.
Yeah, so we got all kinds of good racing noises. But yeah, it was overall. I think it was a great race weekend here. It was a lot of fun. I mean, I enjoyed it just from watching it on TV because you had a dry race at Road America, which was fantastic with traffic. A wet race, a crazy wet race, and then it was a drying track, sort of ish.
That started actually downpouring right at the very end.
At the very end again.
That kind of didn't help the situation at the kink. I think that's probably what caused it. Is that amount of rain?
Yes. That was exactly it. And yeah, which then basically put out the yellow flag and checkered flag pretty much at the same time.
It was the final lap of the race, and I believe the leader was just rounding out turn 3, heading down to turn 5 when they decided to throw the yellow.
Yeah. And even under heading back to the checkered flag, we had a Cadillac that went flying off. I think it might have been the Mustang sampling Cadillac that went off at the kink when they were working. A couple rescue vehicles were near a car that went off, and that was the incident I was referring to there. So it was just kind of like, man, like
I remember a couple laps earlier, the JDC Miller car. I was at turn 3 at the time. The JDC Miller car went off. It recovered, and there's the only Audi in the GTD class. Can't remember the team name, but it also went off. So we had a couple people off turn 3. I don't know if the cameras caught it or not, but they went off. Then you had that incident at the kink with the Porsche and BMW, which I believe they're top 2 in class at the time. They were fighting for the whatever. Then that's when the Corvette kind of snuck by and got another 3 in a row for Corvette.
Yeah, and that was Porsche and BMW. I think Corvette were not really.
They were kind of I think it was Porsche. It was Porsche, Corvette, then the 2 BMWs, and then another Porsche and Corvette, and somewhere in there.
Yeah.
I think the BMWs are kind of in a sandwich there, but they're still they're contending for the win. Mm-hmm. They were up there. Yeah. But the Corvette was kind of it was
they weren't. I don't think they were worthy of having that 1-2 result. But hey, they were there at the end. Obviously, especially when the Porsche is going to spin out at turn 1 and give up the class lead, essentially, which is really unfortunate. And it's just such a gut wrenching. Since they're leaving, you kind of want them just to kind of win to keep motivating Corvette, and also for them to have a good send off, kind of how the Viper team had, the SRT Viper team did, sort of ish. But yeah, I mean, they just haven't had really any amount of good luck. I mean, or if anything, you know.
This is like a 180 from last year, right? When they're just completely dominant. Now this year is like, we can't win.
Yeah, it's the same. It's basically the same car, and it's gonna be unfortunate because I would have loved to hear these cars with the new update, exhaust update.
I don't think they had them at Road America.
They don't.
No.
I know, but I don't know if they're gonna have them like later on this year. And then
it might be just for the WEC cars.
Yeah, but then. Are we going to be having those here next year? I mean, not here, but North America.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. So that might be something to think about, just because it's like, or I'm sure Porsche at some point will send some.
They might do the
cars.
Rolex. They might do the Rolex.
Yeah,
they might do NAC
NAC rounds.
Yeah,
that would be. I would like that. I hope something like that exists because that would be great. But yeah, anything else to really say about Road America? Because it sounds like we're about to get into news and notes and stuff here.
Yeah, that's
what we're talking.
Pretty much it. If you ever have the chance to come by here, you can pretty much go to any part of the track.
Yeah,
like even the kink now, which is basically was probably even 5 years ago, was like virtually unaccessible. You can walk across this bridge to the outside of that short chute between was it turn 9, the carousel, and the kink. Then there's like a little pathway on the inside of the track where you can kind of like view the apex of the kink, and there's thinking of clearing down trees, and that's a new thing that they're doing. So if you ever have the chance, especially since they have IndyCar, NASCAR, IMSA, and then like a bunch of historic and SCCA stuff and bikes, pick your poison and come down, and it's just an enjoyable good time. I would recommend it to anyone.
Yeah, I totally agree. We both have total homerism to this track, but yeah, it is probably my favorite track of all time. And as much as Sebring as a event, and the 12 Hours of Sebring is probably my favorite, the track, this is my favorite track. It's just such a gorgeous track. The landscape is amazing. The way it undulates through the Kettle Moraine Valley and hills. Doing a little Paul Page adjective, adverb, word salad, but. Yeah, and I think they're doing really, really sensible upgrades to the track. My only gripe is the ticket prices. So
yeah, it's a little. If you're gonna just buy spectator,
cheap, but
if you're gonna be a spectator for like the big race weekends, make sure you buy your tickets in advance, because towards like a week and a half of race weekend, they up the price, $10-$20. So you have to get their advance deal. That way you're not getting screwed more on ticket prices.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in the area and you can think about doing a season pass, that's actually pretty cost effective.
That's actually what I'm going to think about doing next year.
I mean, it's definitely, I wouldn't say half cost, but it's close to that. I mean, off if you just pay it up front and get all passes basically for everything. You're just like, oh yeah, I'm here. Like, let me in. And you're good. Except for test sessions, which would be pretty cool if you could do that though. If you had a season pass and there's like Corvettes like testing, you're like, excuse me, sir.
Excuse me. I know some people.
Yeah, it should be like that though. I mean, come on. I feel like every other entertainment industry is doing that. Like Disney does their their whatever. You get to see people do crazy stuff. We should be able to sit there and spy on Corvette or Porsche.
Is that new Glickenhaus coming?
Yeah. Hey, that's worthy of spying over for sure. Man, I almost want to talk about that, but we'll wait. We'll wait on that until we get more info.
It's all vaporware at this point.
Well, they did have that test tunnel image that was on Twitter that Jim posted. So
don't they still need to get approved?
What, for the tub, the FIA tub or something like that? Maybe?
I thought the ACO didn't want them. Or is it IMSA?
No, the IMSA doesn't want them.
Oh, wow.
That was the whole argument.
Americans being dumb? You can't really think about that.
Americans denying Americans, yeah.
Oh, dude, wow.
And what would be the insane thing if they actually went out and won Le Mans and then they were, like, denied by IMSA to go race at Daytona, being, like, the current defending Le Mans winners, and they're like, the people they beat are allowed to race at Daytona, but the American team that beat the like Toyota, who's my favorite team, if they actually did it, like, aren't allowed to go race at Daytona. That's asinine. That is asinine, and it's so hilarious to me. And it's funny too that it's like, for whatever thing you could say about for like a political thing with ACO and all that stuff, it's kind of like, dude, you like this is like a softball, like a soft pitch. You just have to hit it. Like it's not. This isn't a tough decision. Let Glickenhaus in. Like, just say that you can make exceptions, and obviously Glickenhaus can come in. Like, don't do this tippy-tappy thing where it's just like, well, we let major manufacturers, blah, 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 we have to have whatever to maintain.
You let an Alfa Romeo win in TCR class, but I don't see any Alfa Romeos on the road here.
I mean, there's a lot of brand activation involved, yes. And I'm sure Jim Glickenhaus would have a nice little display of some of his cars, but it wouldn't be as grandiose. He wouldn't be as investing. You wouldn't see Glickenhaus signs everywhere, on hospitality tents and along road, track signage, all that stuff. So there's an aspect of marketability to all this stuff too, that it's just kind of like, Jim's just kind of going like, hey guys, are you guys being hypocrites here? Because it's about marketing a little bit instead of the racing. Even though the people we've been complaining about for like the last 5 years straight, about how they hate racing, kind of still do things like the racing way. Hint the ACO. That's what I'm talking about. But anyway, sorry, that was a little political aside. But I desperately want Glickenhaus to do well, just because the better they do, I think the better chance they'll have of actually racing in IMSA, and I can see them in person because I desperately want to see them.
I think we just need class alignment, at least top class alignment.
That's what he's saying. What he's saying. He was saying that we need the
put egos aside
needs to ditch the LMP2 tubs, and I agree with him. They shouldn't be using LMP2 tubs. They should not. LMP2 is its own beast. That's its own thing. It works. But LMP, I think for whatever the upgrade of LMP2 is, the LMP1, LMP X, Z, Y, Infinite, that is its own thing, and it should be built by its own standards, that kind of shit. So, I don't know, man. I think that should be the way forward, and hopefully we'll see Jim racing at an IMSA event near you soon. But yeah.
Speaking of IMSA events near you, we got some changes here.
Yeah.
An IMSA event could be moving near you or moving further away from you, depending on where you live.
Yeah, great news for Southeast people.
Yeah.
I guess people in the South and
more specifically, Georgia area.
Yeah, the Southern Easter. Yeah. There we go. That area. Basically, VIR maintains it.
No fans allowed, though.
No fans allowed. So
and
you can always watch.
The main race is going to be on the Saturday.
Yes, to avoid scheduling conflicts with a very, very popular auto event.
I don't know if people have ever heard of it, though.
Sunday. Yeah, I don't know if we should really say it, though.
Place called Indianapolis, a 500-mile race.
Yeah.
Nobody really cares about it, though.
There's a distance.
I think
mileage.
The Michelin Pilot race on the same day. People are going to want to watch that. I'm not too sure. Virginia is for lovers racing Grand Prix.
Yeah.
And
exactly. The Sunday race, there's some weird people that race without fenders over their tires. It's really odd. So I don't know. But on Saturday there'll be a GT only event at VIR, which will be
20 cars though.
Yeah.
And especially at a big track like VIR that might not put up too good of a show.
Some tells me the way that the Corvettes have started with
GT-Am
the
might be good actually because they were pretty close here at Road America. So
yeah. We'll see. I just feel like that's going to be. I wonder. I feel like it's going to be some pit strategy, maybe tire strategy. It'd be great to see some weather come in. I would love to see a wet VIR. It's been a long time, I feel like, since I've seen some weather come to play at VIR. But look, I got spoiled with Road America again, having some weather, and that was fantastic. So I can't hope too much. But yeah, it's that should be a decent race, even though the car count's a little bit down with that. But a GT only race. That's like one of the final remaining rounds of the Sprint Cup, right? I think
there is. After that, it is
the Roval's coming out.
Yeah, the Charlotte Roval.
And that would be it, right?
I think so.
Yeah. So that would be. So this might be the second last round. Don't quote us on that because
then you have three endurance rounds, right next to each other.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. And speaking of, we have the second endurance round of the year. Incredibly, to say that coming up. At Road Atlanta.
Wow.
Weird to say again. For the 6-hour race, which is also weird to say. That entire combo makes utterly no sense in any calendar year other than 2020. And it's because of the Glen, 6 hour at the Glen being moved from from Watkins Glen to Road Atlanta. Just from the aspect New York's not letting people race there.
Nope.
So We're going to Road Atlanta. So that's going to be Labor Day weekend. That'll be an interesting race. I might even be going to that. We'll find out. I'm going to see how much tickets are. I think they're letting people in for that. I will be social distancing, if anything. And, I'm trying to go to a few races here because I feel like this is the appropriate time to do it. I have nothing else to do. And if they're letting people in, I can be safe.
Okay, I go here for the major race weekends. I put on my mask and try to stay away from people.
I got a bunch of hand sanitizer. Yeah. I know how to stay away from people. You know, they're weird anyway. So
I haven't caught COVID, so like something's working out for me.
But yeah, so the Roval's added, so that'll be the last GT only round. That'll be for the NASCAR
be the last
weekend.
Sprint race as well.
That's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, that's something. During NASCAR weekend. I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, it's going to be on NBCSN, so it's going to be really.
So prepare for a lot of NASCAR people tying in.
Yes,
what you see at the Rolex.
I think it should be pretty. There should be a lot of good battles. I think just with how the track's laid out, there's not a lot of room for passing.
Mid-Ohio, I think.
Oh, yeah, okay. Is that going to be a GT? No, that's not only a GT only round, right?
No, that's LMP2. Only LMP2s are excluded from that. So we got Mid-Ohio and Virginia and Charlotte left.
Okay. And then it pushes on to then it pushes on to Road Atlanta.
I think because you get Road Atlanta, then you have Mid-Ohio and Charlotte, I believe. Then you get, Petite, and I believe 12 hours could be the finale.
12 hours, yep. So that's kind of more or less what I believe is so far the schedule change. And from what I understand, Petite is still going to happen with some fans. I don't know about camping.
I think the 6 hours they're allowing fans as well. I've seen some posts about it.
But it might be a very limited schedule, like a Friday, Saturday allowance, maybe, if anything. And then Sebring, I don't know yet. I don't think there's any word yet on what they're going to do with that. But, I mean, if they only were doing 5,000 fans for Sebring for that one, I just don't know what they're going to do with every, because it's not really down necessarily for like state mandates, because the state can decree, obviously, if they don't want to have spectators at whatever, then that's one thing. But I think this is from like, NASCAR Incorporated kind of thing from their own standpoint. So, and I think we're just lucky because I don't know, there's some NASCAR events that there definitely weren't, they had like third capacity and that was it, or some of them we're still having no fans.
Yeah.
So it's just I'm fortunate that we have this opportunity.
Weekend, but they had no fans. Yeah. Daytona is limited capacity. I know the NASCAR race at Road America, since it's a 4-mile track, well,
same with IndyCar. Yeah. IndyCar was like that too, wasn't it?
IndyCar, Road America in general, like every single since June Sprint was like the big SCCA weekend here. Since it's like a 4-mile track and they only have like limited number of grandstands, they didn't limit the people coming in because they figured, there's lots of room to spread out.
Yeah.
As I think we hear the next group 4 of the day coming past us on the Kettle Moraine Straight here. That's prototypes. That's old IMSA prototypes right there.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna wrap this episode up, and Flood wanted us to mention the Penske Acura split, so we're gonna do that like while the music's starting to fade in. But yeah, there's going to be some interesting developments, I would say, the next couple of years. Hopefully this isn't the end of Penske being an IMSA. That would be such a weirdly failed adventure that I feel like we'd have to talk about that as its own self.
But all we know is that Penske's splitting from Acura, but the rumors are Penske's going to Porsche, and Meyer Shank's going to take over the Acura spot. That's the rumors.
I would love nothing more than that to happen. So, then my PP will be very, very awesome. You can cut that out if you want to. But anyway. Any final thoughts, Kris? How did you? Anything else you want to add while we're hanging out in person at Road America, watching some more racing behind us here? Some prototypes, basically.
It's like old prototype challenge.
Yeah, these are old LMPC, like some Mazdas, man. Yeah, this is gonna be great.
Oh, I just have to say it's. At least it's been nice having IMSA here at Road America. It's been nice going to it. It's my second IMSA race, which was in Daytona, and it's been nice seeing you in person.
Yeah,
first time ever 2 Americans got together for a podcast.
yeah, this is great. Yeah,
I don't think they had. Sure, they did a couple interviews with some people at Bathurst. I think we beat them.
This is genuine. This is professional right here. Look, people were driving past us and we're like, wow, they know eyes behind the back of my head, they were seeing people going like, wow, that is impressive. So I just want to say that.
We actually got a line for autographs, actually. You Chris Washington, I said that much
Well, we had meet and greet, but nobody showed up for that, so maybe this makes up for it. But yeah, Chris, it was a pleasure seeing you. This was like almost just kind of spur of the moment thing. Yeah. And this worked out really, really well. And yeah, hopefully we can do this again in the future because this was a lot of fun. So yeah, on behalf of Chris and myself, Big Monster Austin, thanks everyone. Have a good time. Hopefully enjoy a race stream or race near you safely and social distance and gazoo!